Welcome to the Not Badger for the week ending September 24th, 2016. Here, thanks to our privileged straight cis men who are trying to work off the guilt from their crimes of historical and felony oppression, we have compiled a collection of funny, interesting, and hopefully useful clips from our most watched shows. Enjoy the spoils of their hard work. In Polecat Cast number 80, we talk about the news of the week, including a feminist mother who raised her sons as though they were monsters, an article that claims intelligence is inherited from the mother, and Tiziana Cantone, amongst other things.
Jody doesn't seem to understand that while she cites the Brock Turner case, a case where there seems to be genuine proof that he sexually assaulted an unconscious woman, there are men currently outside of his home bearing military armament that would make Sergeant Kilgore from Apocalypse Now blush. Jody doesn't seem to understand that you can be against paradigms that exacerbate the scope of a problem and still be passionate about helping victims. As it stands right now, I don't see how this type of behavior can be seen as anything other than unconscious child abuse. I'm a co-administrator of a meme page called Social Justice Warriors, follow, you know the drill. I posted it up there and just as a commentary, just to describe my feelings on the whole thing, I basically said that I can say from experience that there is a direct correlation between being told that your existence and your beliefs inadvertently condone the subjugation of an entire gender and feeling suicidal. And, you know, if you were to read that comment online and not hear my tone of voice, you might interpret that as a joke, but I assure you it's not, because the same thing happened to me.
I have another close friend who, for half of his life, the people around him told me he was told him he was a monster, and it was in large part because of his gender. What they basically did was accuse him of something that, if for the same actions, a girl would not have been accused of that. And then they spent, the rest of his childhood, well, you're a monster, you're a monster, you're a monster. And when you do that to a person, what do you expect? What do you expect that person to respond with? It blows my mind that parents and people who are mentors to children, that they would fail to understand that if, these are the same people that, they know you got to give kids positive messages about things, you got to give encouragement, you got to give, not make your criticism hopeless. And yet then they'll turn around when it comes to gender issues, and they have no problem telling boys and men, you're a monster, you're a monster, you're a monster. That's not going to have an effect? It's different because you're talking about a gender issue? It's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the effect is that, when you're a kid, like this kid was at the time, I think he was 16, you don't really understand the different nuances of issues in regards to gender. And when you have these messages sort of dictated to you by friends and family or people that you happen to know through work or whatever, and you feel that there's something wrong with it because it's causing you so much self-hatred, yet you can't really explain what it is because of your youthful naivety, it sort of creates this pressure cooker within, because you can't really talk about what's causing you problems. You can potentially allude to it and say, well, maybe this whole feminist thing is causing me a lot of distress, and then you have feminists come in and just try to make you feel bad for feeling that particular way, and it just builds up, and you get to that point where you feel like you're going to explode, much like this kid. Although, that's not unconfirmed, we're just speculating here, but yeah. That's certainly the case for me, and I'm sure the case with the men that Hannah has talked to.
Second Nexus, who took there was an article that was shared between them, Cosmopolitan, and a website called psychologyspot.com, tried to state essentially that intelligence is inherited from the mother because it comes from an X chromosome. But the problem with that is that men also have an X chromosome. So they are just wrong about this story. This is just not true. So besides the fact that, just so you guys know, when it comes to intelligence, tests have shown that men and women are on a bell curve when they test for IQ. And the thing that's really interesting about it is that the way that the bell curve shows up for men and women is that there are more men on the extreme ends of both ends of this bell curve. So that means there are more men with lower than average intelligence than women, but there are also more men with higher than average intelligence than women.
And that's, of course, based only on the standard methods for testing intelligence, which have all been pretty much deemed, necessarily as conclusive as people credit them for being. Because then there's the other thing is people forget that standardized tests, the best thing that standardized tests measure is how well you take standardized tests. Whatever else they're measuring, it's secondary, compared to how well you take the test. And a lot of intelligence tests only measure certain types of intelligence. They don't really necessarily measure everything about your intelligence. So that it's possible that is an accurate representation of human intelligence, and it's also possible that is a vastly incomplete representation of human intelligence. It's not something that decisions should be made based on, and it's not something that anybody should take offense at, because it's simply a set of numbers, and there's not really any meaning that we can attach to it. The way feminists draw conclusions from stuff like this is bullshit. I'm sure they're probably going to turn around and say fathers don't matter, genetically because of stuff like this, or some other such bullshit. And it's something that it's one of the things that really bugs me about feminist research. They look at stuff like this, they start with a conclusion that they want to draw, and they look at stuff like this and they find a way to draw that conclusion, even if it's not really a rational conclusion. So I don't like looking at research on intelligence and drawing any conclusion. It usually, for me, it just inspires more questions.
Yeah, it all started with a conclusion. If this was true, this article, it would mean that it does not matter whatsoever how intelligent the father is. A woman could breed with a congenital imbecile and still produce a genius. It would mean there is no evolutionary incentive for male intelligence. Which would, if it were so, explain why so many women are drawn to utter morons. Maybe that's what they're looking for in this article, an excuse for women to be attracted to violent morons. That's the conclusion this article. Women are attracted to violent morons. How do we figure out why this is okay?
She may not realize it, but she was a feminist victim from the beginning. She was a feminist victim before the whole thing started. Before she joined that group, before feminism got its ugly hooks into her, if she went places expecting to get unwanted attention, if that was her expectation, I'm going to a nightclub and I'm going to get unwanted attention, that's already a fearful mindset. And it's been a few years, I will admit that. Like back in the 80s, though, I did used to go out with friends to nightclubs and dance, more bars than anything, because my area is not that sophisticated. But it never would have dawned on me to think I'm going to go in there and get unwanted attention. No, it was I'm going to go in there and have a damn good time with my friends, and some of them are going to drink, and I'm going to get my drinks paid for because I'm drinking pop and I'm the designated driver. So all I got to do is go in and dance. This is great, And that was it. That was what was on my mind. And if I happened to meet somebody, I met somebody. And if I didn't meet somebody, I didn't meet somebody. But the idea that I was going to have to deal with unwanted attention and that it was going to be a big deal for me if I did, never was on my mind when I went out to those places. Hell, half the reason you go there is to get somebody else's attention, make a connection, and maybe make a friend, or find somebody to date.
This article is undeniable, irrefutable proof that feminism has evolved to a movement that is not at all for trying to improve women's self-esteem. It's not to empower them to be able to go beyond limits that they set for themselves or what society sets for them. It's just to make them feel like they're the victim of everything and build their entire identity around that.
Yeah, a pivotal line in this article is, what if a man whistled at me? What if someone looked me up and down? How was I supposed to deal with that? Well, you got two choices. Either you can deal with it like this lady and be better than the fear-mongering, or you can make it illegal for men to do those things. And it's pretty much confirmed at this point that the feminist answer is to make it illegal for men to whistle and to look at women up or down or both or neither.
I'm starting to get this sense of feminism as an entity in a trench coat in a dark alley, like signaling people to come over. Come here, try out a couple of these panic attacks. First one's free.
I think it's even more nefarious than that. Honestly, it's more of a protection racket than anything else.
Like, well, you better follow the feminism, and we might have to do something like, make whistling at people illegal.
Well, you got both going on there because they're in college campuses and women's studies classes, and even in their counseling now that they get during orientation, pulling that shit. First panic attacks free on all the girls, and telling them that the guys are there to mac on them, and it's something horrible and evil and dangerous, and they should be afraid of it. And then at the other end of it, they're threatening legal changes. They're threatening businesses. Oh, you got to have this many women, even if they're not qualified, or we're going to call you sexist. You want to give some money to our foundation so that we don't have to come out against you? It really is a big scam. It's like a combination of being drug dealers and being a mafia protection racket. This is going to be a real sore topic for me today, because I'm right now waiting to hear back from a friend in crisis, and I don't want to sound callous, but I have a lot less sympathy for someone who, they basically threw something and it bounced back and hit them. And they threw it with intent to hurt and humiliate. They threw it with intent to do to the person they threw it at what they ended up experiencing. And it bounced back and hit them. I feel a lot less sympathy for that than I would if she were in a situation where, something had happened to her and she had not had any part in it. And I hate to say this, but every example that we run across in the men's movement where our attention is drawn to a man who has killed himself, it's been because of something horrible. His kids are taken away. He's been wrongfully accused and he's afraid he's going to go to jail, or his reputation has been ruined. Men who have killed men and boys who have killed themselves even after being exonerated because the accusation is so bad. Men and boys who have been made homeless because of draconian child support obligations. And then you get this woman whose act of abuse against another person didn't go the way she wanted it to, and people found out about it, and she was embarrassed and she killed herself. And it just kind of pisses me off because these other guys, you see media reports about their situations and you see people talking about them online, and people come out in droves to condemn their actions. How dare they kill themselves in their terrible circumstances? They did it just to hurt the people in their lives. They did it just to get revenge, whatever. Here's somebody who basically did. She did it just to hurt the people in her life. She did it just to get revenge. Not one of those feminists that were out there condemning the guy that set himself on fire in front of the courthouse because he lost his family are speaking up about this woman. Not one of the feminists that tried to silence the suicide note. I recently retweeted Judgy Bitch's reading of it to a suicide prevention hashtag. Not one of the feminists that condemned A Voice for Men for publishing that suicide note is out there saying, well, no, this woman's not a victim. None of them. Because she's a woman. Mm-hmm. And the only reason that they don't have sympathy for those men is because they're men. And the only reason that they can't take a rational look at this woman's actions just because she's a woman.
Life is so full of sublime, beautiful moments that to think that you're making a call that really shouldn't be yours to make. You're telling yourself that this is the only option, and it's a shame that you have to be all by yourself and brood and spin when there are people that are, like Hannah said, ready to lift you up. So please contact that person.
There was a line, something that she said that just really blows my mind. It's when she says, "My sons, who hate hearing about their own privilege, nestle inside it like a blanket and accuse me of making up its existence. My sons are part of the problem." Now, when I think it's bad enough that when you're a boy and you are growing up in a school system and an education system that already not only does it not know how to deal with you or how to properly educate you, because it's not concerned with giving boys priority, and it's instead mostly raises them like dysfunctional girls. And then those boys grow up and they go to learn, sex education in high school and in middle school, and they learn about how terrible they are, not only historically, because they usually do this thing like throughout history, men have always been, they ruled everything, and women were under their thumbs, and they're the fault for all the wars and all the deaths and the Inquisition and the Crusades and all this shit. And you learn about, women's lib and all this stuff that's essentially put on men from the beginning of time as a boy. Then you go into college, and the first thing you have to take are consent classes, because otherwise you might just lose your shit and go raping women. And you have to be told not to do that. This is all just standard stuff. Like when I went to my college, one of the every quarter, they would do this thing with the new students, and they would tell them things like 1/3 of you would rape a girl if you thought you could get away with it. It was based on this really shitty study that they did a while back, and which we've already discussed on previous shows. So you have to deal with all that stuff. But at the very least, for most boys, at the very least, they have reprieve with their mother. At the very least, they may have that. And because they say this, as the saying goes, mother is God in the eyes of a child. So when your own mother is telling you that you're part of the problem and you're part of rape culture, and that she's disappointed because you don't see your own privilege, how can you be surprised that your boys are depressed to the point where they're feeling suicidal? Their own mother hates them for their gender. She won't say it in plain English, in plain words, but it is in all of her writing and the way that she approaches dealing with her boys. It's like she wishes she never had them. Because if she had girls, she wouldn't be writing these pieces. At least not like pieces like my teen girls are blind to rape culture.
Your sons are not dogs, all right? You're supposed to believe they're good as soon as they pop out of you there. Dogs are those things that you make do tricks, you make them behave, and then you say, good boy, okay? Dogs are supposed to be conditionally good boys, okay? And it's interesting that when they become angry and defensive, that's not an action, is it, Jody? That's just natural boyhood, isn't it? It's the default for boys to be angry and defensive, but they have to perform actions before they can be good. They have to perform the exact correct actions that you and your feminist posse want them to perform before you will consider that glob of flesh that popped out of you as good. Fuck you to 17 kinds of hell, you cunt.
I don't know if every family has this, but I know a lot of families do. And in my family, in my extended family, not my household, there's a family member that had a particular prejudice. That no matter what the topic of conversation when he was around, he would always turn it to that. And he always had the folks of that particular prejudice had their own language surrounding that particular prejudice, using specific names for the people against whom they were prejudiced and everything else, essentially slurs, and a lot of more technical sounding slurs, and it gets very wearing on you when you're around a person and all they do is go off on a particular group against whom they are prejudiced. And that's not only the only thing they'll talk about, but if you don't agree with them, you're the one who's prejudiced, you're the bigot, you're the bad guy, and you're supporting dysfunction. And I grew up not directly affected by that all the time. It was something that I noticed, and we in the extended family would shake it off and kind of laugh about it, and it was funny, and he was our Archie Bunker. But imagine being in the group that the individual was prejudiced against and having to hear it all the time. Imagine being not only in that group and having to hear that all the time because the person lives with you, but the person doing it to you is of the relationship to you that is so fundamentally and profoundly human forming, basically, that popular culture has all kinds of examples of comparing it to godhood. Your own mother tells you you're a monster. Your own mother tells you that you're fundamentally flawed because of your gender.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not just abuse. It's beyond ordinary abuse. It's like the difference between calling, hitting somebody and leaving a bruise abuse and cutting their legs off or stabbing them in the spleen.
Jodi Allard, the woman who wrote this article, she is a former techie turned freelance writer living in Seattle. She writes primarily about parenting, women's issues, and life with a chronic illness. She writes about parenting primarily. This woman gives parenting advice. Now for Rant Zerker number 68. We look at feminism on Pinterest. We you lads.
I was thinking about this. I mean, the assumption at the root of this is that white people do not want minorities to succeed. And yet at the same breath, they'll say that we consider Asians to be model minorities. Well, wouldn't we hate the Asians most of all? Because they succeed. They succeed better than we do, in fact. And we're not freaking out about that. I think most white people who are normal and not racists want everybody to succeed because it enriches the human race. So, no, we didn't start a race war with you. We started a race war with nobody. There is no race war, and there's no ending it. How about the women, like myself, who are irritated at presenting the idea that girls or women need a goddamn cheering squad to get on with their lives? Like, I don't care. I don't need a cheering squad. I don't need somebody constantly affirming my life choices in order to just get on with my life. And I actually find it obnoxious that you people constantly say that this is something that girls need. No, what girls need is to learn to live their lives and let people have their opinions. Because otherwise, they're going to be trying to chase down making everybody agree with their life choices, and that is fucking impossible. And you know what? I'm just pointing it out. You can continue to do this. I'm just pointing it out that you're promoting the idea that women and girls can't make a choice in their life that other people disapprove of and simply say, yeah, you have your opinion, I have mine, it's my life. Moving on. I think she's talking about femicide in, quote-unquote, femicide in Latin American countries, which is actually bullshit. Women are uniquely protected against violence everywhere around the world. Women are not targeted because they're women. They're targeted despite being women. And you can see that if you look at the statistics. And I did finally find the report that this was from. And I will attempt to bring it up as I speak about this.
All right. Well, you bring it up. I'll say
Okay, it's called The Weapons That Kill Civilians, and it found that when aggressors are able, at least in Iraq, and it's a review of non-combatant deaths in Iraq between 2003 and 2008. And there's no reason to believe that this can't be extended to other conflicts throughout the world. When aggressors target people for their aggression, the ratio of male to female who end up getting killed depends on the type of target and how much control the aggressor has over it. If it's a bomb in a crowded place or a shelling, it's usually 50-50 because they have absolutely no control over who is going to be in that location. If it's sniping, it's usually most often they snipe men. Like I think 90% of the time, it's men who get killed by snipe because you have a fairly high degree of control over your target. When you get to something like torture murders, kidnapping and torture murders, it is 98% male. So the more precise the way of killing, the more likely someone will target a man for violence. And the fact is that women are actually being targeted for violence despite being women. When they are subject to violence, it's despite being a woman, not because of it. So you are totally and utterly wrong here. And also, you have reduced women down to victims, where statistically that does not bear out. Where statistically being a woman is protective against being subject to violence. And incidentally, in Latin American countries, once again, the significant and overwhelming number of people who are dying in these drug-related violent episodes are men. So what are you trying to say here?
And how many women are out there in third world countries and other such countries holding up signs to white America saying, "Help, help, come save us from our bad men," and then white America gets blamed for all the fucking wars.
Is there a male version of the word femicide, or do we just call that?
It's homicide, but that
just humans.
Covers both men and women.
So there is no.
No, there's no. I guess it would be called androcide, and there is no such thing because, to be quite frank, men are the acceptable targets of violence everywhere. We accept the idea that men should get their brains blown out. We accept they should die, choking on their own vomit, trying to keep their guts in. That's what we think. That role is what we think is acceptable for men. That's the role that men should occupy, not women. So this is an artifact of the fact that everywhere does not consider it acceptable for women to be subject to violence. And yet she's saying the exact reverse.
The problem with this is that girls wear makeup to make themselves, almost always, to make themselves more attractive to the opposite sex. That is why they do it. They want to look good. Good for whom? Good for themselves, right? It makes you feel good to look good. But the reason it makes you feel good is because other people think you look good.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm sorry, but when you can go back 200 years and hear about, historically women working in post offices rubbing their fingers on the dye stamps on the burlap mail sacks, and then putting it on their lips.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something to it. You look at every single freaking culture. Women have adorned themselves.
I mean, the point is that men adorn themselves with things that men's form of makeup for society, because of social status being the most important factor when it comes to mate selection for females and what they find desirable in males. It's no surprise that men tend to adorn themselves with Veblen goods. It's stuff that is more expensive than is practical to have, and it has been linked to actual increases physiologically in things like their testosterone. So driving a big sports car, wearing an expensive watch, all this stuff will actually make men feel more confident and project more out of sort of signs that they are sort of more sort of sexually prowess, more of a desirable mate. Women's sexuality is a lot more tied to how they look. So it shouldn't really be any surprise that the things that women use to increase their social value is push-up bras, makeup, what are the lemon bullshit things that they wear that sucks their ass in and makes it look plump and firm rather than fucking dumpy like a wet pillow. All of that sort of shit. This should not really be a surprise to anyone. And of course, this not only serves as sort of signaling outside of your own sex, sort of your sexual availability and sexual prowess to the opposite sex, but it's also the form of intersexual competition as well. You know, men's wealth and resource is then what makes him appear more desirable than other men. Women putting on their makeup and all of that other stuff is then what makes them appear better than other women. And it shouldn't really be then a surprise to anyone that there have been numerous studies done on the psychology of women's intersexual competition with each other. And women will shit talk other women behind their backs to lower other women in their social pecking order. And it's so funny because I've actually had a lengthy conversation with someone once in a comment section. They try to tell me that, like, human beings don't have social hierarchies. This is just a thing that doesn't exist. It's all a patriarchal social construct. So, okay, fine. Explain to me why women do this behavior naturally. They will sort themselves out into social hierarchies by putting themselves up with all of this makeup and all of this other whatnot, because that is their main form of sort of social broadcast of their status. Why will they do that? And then why is there a physiological response to that? Why is it that when we have women in a position of dominance over other women, and once they've established a social hierarchy, you can take an observable pattern of their menstrual cycles and sync them up with the woman that everyone else says, yeah, she's like the top bitch. Everyone just does what she's like the number one girl. To give it a year of all those women in the same environments at the same period of time, all their periods will sync up. That's something that we know, but it happens in line with the social hierarchy.
You know what? I don't have a counter argument for this shirt. I think that this is very accurate.
And you know what? I approve of this shirt. I think all women who identify as angry liberal feminist killjoys should announce this to the world. And they should be as strident, bitchy, manipulative, bullying, vicious, violent as they want.
Yes, tell me so I know who to avoid. India needs feminism because boys will be boys is a criminal response to rape. But wait a minute.
When did this...
But wait a minute. According to Jyoti Tiwari, who we've had on the show a couple times, India it's like the king of all false rape accusations. Like, that's like the capital of false rape accusation. And men are totally boned there. To the point where MRAs, or people who consider themselves MRAs, are getting more, they're actually getting airtime. They're getting platforms. It's so bad in India. This is like the opposite of what the truth is, it seems.
The idea that other people might have an opinion, as in, that's not a body type I'm attracted to. But not in terms of like, oh my God, that bitch is so fat or whatever, but that's not a body type. I think that's not a body type I'm attracted to, is what's really going on here. Even if they don't say anything or give her any looks or whatever, right? It's the fact that the whole fat acceptance movement isn't about acceptance of fat people. It's about trying to shame men into being attracted to women that they're not attracted to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's really what this is. It's not about, she thinks that other people might have an opinion about how she looks. It's that they have the wrong opinion about how she looks, and she wants them to have a different one.
But these days, slut-shaming includes, it covers so much, it's so broad that it doesn't really have a meaning anymore. Like, if you're just, let's say you're a man and you meet a woman and you find her attractive, and then you learn that, she is really, really involved with hookup culture, and she slept with many, many guys in like the past year. You may not find her attractive, and the reason is not because you're slut shaming. It's because you might be afraid that she won't value. Maybe you want something serious, and she doesn't appear to be the kind of person that values sex that much, at least in the eyes of the guy who is looking to sleep with her. Maybe you are afraid that she could give you an STD, because no matter how protected you are, there is nothing that really protects you 100% if you're engaged with lots of sex with lots of different partners.
Here's what I have observed about all of this. This is all about other people's opinions. So apparently, the biggest oppressive force in society for women are the opinions of other people.
Women had limited rights, but they had extra protections under the law, right? They had constraints, but they had extra protections, right? What we're seeing now with men and sort of the feminist influence on government is we are seeing women having extra rights and, men having constraints, but no extra protections. They like the idea that a matriarchy will be in any way just, right? I said it in the Q&A or maybe in the panel. The idea a patriarchy will say women and children first onto the lifeboats, and a matriarchy will say women and children and the women's luggage first onto the lifeboats. That is what will happen.
And I've found that women used an "I have a boyfriend and husband" excuse to reject unwanted sexual attention and harassment by their bosses, were actually more likely to be left alone than any other excuse, including "I'm not interested." By their bosses? Why don't you just go to the fucking HR department? That's why it's there. I mean, what male boss is stupid enough to actually hit on a female employee under his direction at this point in time?
You don't even need to hit on a female employee to get fired for sexual harassment. All you need is for a woman employee to not decide she doesn't like you, and then she can just go to HR and get you fired. She can just make the claim. Because when I've seen this happen in my jobs, where a very sensitive woman that was just like had a chip on her shoulder, or she just decided she didn't like the boss, or an employee would just go to us, because I was the manager at the time, say, this is going on, this sexual harassment, this is how it happened. I have no evidence. All I have is her testimony. And then I go to my boss and I say, well, this is what she's claiming, but I don't have any evidence and I don't have any testimony. Of course, the guy is, that she's saying this about, he's like denying it. So what do I do? And my boss was like, we unfortunately, our hands are tied. We have to take this seriously. We have to fire the guy. Because if we don't, she's just going to go above you to the next level. And when you get beyond at least where I worked, where you have like locations, once you go out of the location, you go to the corporate level, the people in corporate they're not interested in what the truth is. They're just interested in like essentially squashing the situation, avoiding the lawsuit.
Okay, yeah.
And then, so they'll just fire him without evidence.
I actually have a piece of research kind of on that right in front of me.
Wow.
I've looked it up. Actually, I was looking up something that goes on sort of about the "I have the boyfriend" thing. It's the token resistance thing. I've actually got 3 studies up, just sort of quickly checking through all of their results. All 3 of them. One of them was done in America. The other one was done also in America, and then there's a third one which was done in America, Japan, and Russia. All of them, so this is actually 5 separate sample groups, every single one of them have found that between 40 to 60% of women will say no when they will offer a no when the answer is not actually no. Like they'll give token resistance to see if the guy will continue pursuing. So this idea that, it's like, oh, they kind of ignore a no, it's like, well, that's possibly because more guys have found that no doesn't always mean no. And I hate saying that because it's quote mineable as fuck, but there is reasonable evidence to suggest that that's actually true. But if it's "I have a boyfriend," that's much more of a definitive, there is definitely no way I'm going to do anything. And something else which I've actually found really interesting from this study.
That's
Wait, Karen,
no, but I want to.
Karen.
Because men have said that. No, I have a wife. No, I have a girlfriend. No, I can't. Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. Men use that too.
Okay, continue.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I just wanted to look up the rates of men for that. Can I quickly find it? No, I can't find the men's category.
Well, did they not have one?
This happens when you try and read a study really quickly. But what was interesting is they also actually in this documented consent to unwanted sex, and that they've sort of classed it as sexual miscommunication, which is the reverse of token resistance, and it's when you say yes but you actually mean no. Like you sort of feel pressured into it, which is a thing that happens. You know, you'd be naive to think that it doesn't. But what's really interesting is that in their study, 46% of women had acquiesced. They said yes when they meant no, but 63% of men said yes when they meant no.
Of course.
So rather interestingly, if we want to go down that route, this study, and this is the three country study, the America, Russia, and Japan one, has found that, you know, in their instance, more than half of the men were basically raped, but about 40% of the women were. It's kind of it's not sort of an actual rape or sexual assault thing. It's just a kind of, they're sure that they want to have sex because, you know, it's with their partner, but maybe not at that moment in time. So it's not an actual, for the sake of the study, it's not actually sort of a criminal offense kind of thing.
She looks like a 2-year-old having a meltdown because she's not getting a candy bar in the supermarket. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, here's what my mother and father always told me, something along the lines of this, and all responsible parents tell their children is, yes, you have every right to be miserable. You do not have a right to make everyone around you miserable, so you need to go somewhere else and have your little tantrum. Because, yes, you have a right to your feelings, but you don't get to vomit them on me.
On Ermagerd Zerker's special, the He for She edition, we listen to Emma Watson as she speaks at a multi-million-dollar event as the underdog struggling under the patriarchy.
Being a part of He for She for the last 2 years has been an incredible learning experience for me.
I'm sure it has. Because you know what? I think it was in June, after she launched it, it was in June, late June, that she changed the wording of the pledge on the website to not specifically single out, I pledge to, you know, stop sexism and violence against women and girls, but made it gender neutral. So I'm sure it was a bit of a learning experience for her because they had to actually change the wording of their pledge to not be completely fucking sexist. And yet you are a grassroots movement of underdogs fighting for the oppressed. You are not the establishment, Emma Watson. You are not and you do not have influence on the political system. No. Because, you know, every time I call feminists out on their previous bad acts, like gendering federal domestic violence legislation in the U.S. or bringing about the tender years doctrine and promoting it and upholding it and resisting any change to that, and all of those things, whenever I imply even just a little bit that feminism has any kind of institutional power, what I hear from feminists is, I only wish we had that kind of power. We're just a bunch of girls. What are you afraid of, a bunch of girls? We can't actually do anything. We don't have any real power. We're just a grassroots movement. We don't, and in implying that we have any power in the halls of power or politics, any influence in the media, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory.
I would just like to say, standing here in my Givenchy dress and Manolo Blahnik shoes, with my millions of pounds of bank account, I truly understand the plight of women now, especially since I have the backing of the UN.
It's only when you get up into these upper spheres of power where all of a sudden you have this rhetoric of divisiveness in terms of the partnership between men and women, and this, men are oppressing you and holding you down and keeping you from being all you can be. Yeah, no, that's not the way most women see it, because most women don't get to wear a Givenchy dress and Manolo Blahnik shoes to a fucking $1 million event. They don't.
Yeah, it's just
exactly.
It's fucking remarkable. Like, okay, this is the end. August was basically the anniversary, the 3-year anniversary of Honey Badger Radio. It's a group of women, for the most part, founded by a group of women. Well, I guess founded by me, and Karen was along for the ride, and Hannah, to talk about men's issues and bring awareness of men's issues. 3rd-year anniversary, and just on our 3rd year, we get it's not a shoddy space by any stretch of the imagination.
But it's not like the SPLC's 2 poverty palaces in Montgomery, is it?
Yeah, no, it's a modest office space. We have managed to scrape together enough to get a modest office space for a growing endeavor. She, on the 2nd year of anniversary of He for She, is emceeing or mistress of ceremonying probably what is there's no way this is under like $1 million. It probably is more like 5 million, if not. She's emceeing a $5 million event where the elite of the world are rubbing elbows and sucking champagne.
The path to prosperity for low and middle income people is strong family units, strong nuclear families. That is what it is. Right, and all her movement has done, has been to, from the very beginning, has been to undermine the relationship between men and women, sow seeds of distrust and animosity and resentment between men and women, make the deal so toxic for men that no man with 2 brain cells to rub together would ever fucking get married. Right? Ever, and you're undermining the fabric of the most marginalized classes of society. You're essentially further marginalizing those who are most vulnerable, right? Who are the poor, the low income, low middle income, right? All of those people who would do better if they were pairing up and working together as a team. Yeah, no, you've set up the system so that no man in his right mind would ever team up with a woman, ever, because all it is when it ends, he's going to be financially destroyed, right? So, yeah, that's what you've done. Thanks, Emma Watson. You've empowered wealthy women, right? You've given wealthy men something to virtue signal over. And you've completely fucked over all of the most marginalized people in society. Brava!
Seen He for She in Times Square and made it a term in the Urban Dictionary. After 2 billion media impressions.
Wait, so getting into the Urban Dictionary is that an achievement? Is that really like a marker of success? It's in the Urban Dictionary, guys. The real dictionary is right around the corner.
The Urban Dictionary, like with such entries as the rusty trombone, the rusty fishhook.
Yeah, and thought.
Yeah.
I think
bruh. Excellent.
I think bruh got
That's
in there.
Cleveland Steamer.
Yeah.
Alligator Fuck House, the Cincinnati bow tie. Arabian
Donkey
goggles.
Punching.
Glass bottom boat ride.
Angry pirates.
Donkey punching.
Oh my god, we could do this all day.
We should probably get going. All right.
Yeah, we're like a filthy bunch. Oh my god.
Yes. And Gamergate is in the Urban Dictionary.
Yes.
So you're sharing a space with some of the most vile and destructive and hateful basement dwelling fucking white males on the internet. Who are on one hand completely irrelevant and not worthy of any attention, while simultaneously being ever present and policing the internet for any women that might dare speak up about anything.
And all powerful.
It's all powerful and insignificant at once.
We all belong to a long history of people who have made sacrifices, some groups much more than others.
You mean like men?
Like the Chartists in the UK? Like the fucking Chartists in the UK who between 1830 and 1865 saw their members be shot in the street, die in prison or be exiled to Tasmania in order to actually get a universal suffrage and broad electoral reforms, right? Like those ones, who nobody fucking has ever heard about because the suffragettes came along and hogged all of history's kudos, right? Yeah, like those guys, like those people who laid the groundwork for universal suffrage, giving up their lives, unlike the suffragettes who the only death that could be attributed to their movement was death of one of their own, that is, was a woman who freaking participated in a publicity stunt gone wrong.
I don't know if I would have believed you if you had told me 2 years ago, before I made my he for she speech, that we might have the first female president of the United States.
Well, that was obviously she for me. Ugh.
And she's a fucking nightmare. But she has a vagina, so it's all good. As this he for she gala and her support from the UN and governments and corporations across the globe has clearly shown, when men occupy greater than 50% of positions of power, women are ignored, right? That's how that works. That's how that fucking works. Meanwhile, right, 4 years ago, Warren Farrell proposed, he put on Obama's desk a proposal for a White House Council on Men and Boys. It was on the agenda. They had flown a Boy Scout and his troop leader out to present it to Obama in front of news cameras, right? And then, oh my goodness, it just got erased from the agenda and it's been tabled ever since, right? It's fallen down the fucking memory hole, right? Because men in power will ignore women and privilege men and boys, right? And they will not do one damn thing for women other than, holding these freaking $1 million gala events where wealthy freaking privileged women can talk about how the world is just so hard on women and nobody pays attention to their problems.
When we actually perceive a group as being powerful, we lose sympathy for them. And we don't see like that they should be served first. We think the people who don't have power, who we perceive not to have power, we perceive to be weak or victimized, we want them to be served first. So we have to do a lot of work, if we do want to subjugate a group of people, to make them seem more powerful than ourselves, to talk about their privilege, to talk about their secret conspiracies to keep us down, to talk about how they control the world of finance or politics or whatever. We have to do that in order to take away the natural protections that we grant people we see as harmed and damaged. We're a social species, and that's one reason why we became so super social, is because when we perceive those people to have issues or those people to have weaknesses or vulnerabilities, we want to help them. We don't want to, other species, I guess, would kill and eat them. That's what makes us human, is that when we perceive a group of people to have vulnerabilities, we want to help them. Mm-hmm. And so this is like completely incompatible with human psychology.
Yes.
It's just, it doesn't even make sense.
But it kind of splits off. I agree with you, Allison, but it also kind of splits off, because I've noticed a distinction between there are people who genuinely want to do good, and then there are people who simply want to be perceived as doing good.
You know what's really revolutionary? It's those Afghan women that I read about 3 years ago or something in an article, who were berating the West and the NGOs and the UN and the forces who had come, Canadians, Americans, all of those, who had decided that the way to deal with Afghanistan was to only help women and girls, right? Only liberate women and girls, only educate women and girls. And these Afghan women, these revolutionary Afghan women said, what the fuck is wrong with you? Are you determined to see our men and our boys sicken and wither and die, from neglect, and leave the entire job of rebuilding our country to the women and girls? Is this what you want for the women of Afghanistan? Susan B. Anthony, in 1849, at a temperance dinner, said that women were the moral arbiters of society. They are the ones who set the standards in terms of what is considered to be polite, what is considered to be not okay, what is considered to be acceptable public behavior, what is considered to be vulgarity, right, and not acceptable. And that if every woman decided, right, and acted on this decision, that they would never tolerate a man in their company who had been drinking, right, men would stop drinking. If women wanted to flex that muscle, men would fall in line. She knew that, she said it. She came right out and fucking said it. And this is absolutely 100% the power that women have. Warren Farrell has said that if women tomorrow collectively decided that the most sexually attractive thing about men was their ability to walk on their hands, what would you see? You would see nothing but lessons, gyms, freaking programs, right? Teaching men how to walk on their fucking hands.
To go back to what Karen was saying about the moral arbiters, this is the withering whinge pit of women are moral arbiters, and we remember things, and we're emotional, and we feel things, and we remember birthdays. And then you get into emotional labor of how come we have to remember birthdays? How come we have to do all the childcare? But I'm perfectly happy to have the tender years saying I should do all the childcare because I'm just better suited. Both sides of the coin, and I'm really glad that on a more widespread scale, people are starting to go, hey, wait a minute, you can't have it both ways. You can't say I'm better at this and then complain about being better at it. You can't do that. But as for women, I mean, objectively speaking, as for women being moral arbiters of anything, I beg to disagree.
It's not necessarily that they use it for the right reasons.
No. It's clearly that they're more moral. It's
not. It's like you can
have the moral power.
Exactly.
Just because men have more physical force doesn't mean that.
I agree with the premise. I don't disagree with what you're analyzing. We're doing the use mention thing, right? But I disagree with any assumption that women are fundamentally more moral. No. Do not go down that path, and any of the listeners.
Absolutely not. Actually, I think that women are more mercenary than men are, in a lot of ways. So, yeah, more solipsistic, more mercenary, more what's in it for me, more what have you done for me lately.
My big thing that stands out when I watch Emma Watson is she speaks about female leadership. She speaks about setting role models and examples for women. And yet when she speaks, she is not representing a position of leadership. She is not representing a point of conviction or strength. It's constantly deflecting to other people. It is ingratiating. It is pleading. It is playing on heartstrings and sympathy. There is no argumentation. There is no leadership. She herself is not representing qualities of a leader. And yet we wonder why there are so few female political leaders.
What is she risking? What is she risking all
She's
this?
asking and begging, and her hands are in her lap, and she's meek, and she's got the big eyes going, I'm so grateful for all the support, and I'm so blessed to be here.
Let me rule you.
Her idea. Yeah. None of this was her idea. Do you remember her initial speech? He for she, her initial speech.
Yes, I do. She's a puppet. She is a puppet in a very nice tailored suit.
She was asked by the establishment to be the spokesperson for he for she for UN women. She was asked by them. They reached out to her and said, would you like to do this? She's not risking anything. She's taking a job.
Yeah.
That was offered to her.
Yeah, because fundamentally, I mean, a lot of people, say that I also do the appeal to sympathy, especially because I cried in that one video after we were booted from Calgary Expo.
Yeah, I know, because you didn't have any reason to be upset or anything over that. Yeah. Anybody who fucking is gonna get on Allison's case over that can lick my fucking butthole. Lick it good. I'll take a shit and you can lick it again.
Damn, girl.
Okay, all right.
Shit just got real.
That's racist. Shit,
Okay,
indeed.
That's like
got real.
unwashed salad tossing. I really, really hate this criticism of you, Allison, because that was actually the first video I ever saw of you. And it just came across my feed, and I'm like, oh, what's this? And I'm watching it, and I am, like, legendarily nonplussed by female tears. I'm like, yeah, what the fuck do you want now? But I'm watching you, and I'm like, and of course, I'm looking for tells, right? So I'm looking for, like, your pupillary dilation. I'm looking for the flushing of your cheeks. I'm looking for, are you puffy, and because that's how I think, right? But I'm looking at you, and I'm listening to your voice, and I'm looking at your face, and I'm like, holy shit, she's really fucking crying. I better pay attention because she's upset. Damn. And that is how I became introduced to you and Karen and Hannah and everybody. So thank fucking God you made that video. Because if you had not made this impassioned video that got so much attention, although I'm sure it was hard for you to make because your heart wasn't on your fucking sleeve. Your heart was in the middle of your fucking forehead. But that is what brought me, anyway, to you. And I know others as well. So
yeah, I appreciate it. It's just I wish it had been a different video, but
it couldn't have been a different video and still have been authentic because there are shitlords like me that are constantly looking for how are we being shilled, how are we being fooled, how are we being tricked, and so that video, as horrible as it was, is necessary for people like me to go, I guess this is serious. So maybe I should start paying fucking attention.
Moving on to Honey Badger Radio number 72, we bring on Dave Cullen, Computing Forever, to discuss social media and how it is being corrupted by social justice and regressive ideologues, and solution to that in the form of Minds.com.
You're dealing with these very heavy subjects, and you are just a person with an internet connection. And sometimes it just feels like the tennis ball machine is like hitting you at 1,000 miles an hour, and you're just batting them back one at a time, and you can't really make a significant amount of change.
I just became fascinated with the nature of human beings, with how we came to be this way, the double-edged nature of a lot of these things. Some of the stuff that's preventing us from making progress in this area are the very things that became adaptive because they worked so well in the past. And I am invigorated by it. Some things are never going to change, or if they change, they're not going to change very much. Even embracing that as a probability doesn't bum me out the way it used to bum me out once I changed my focus a little bit and changed my approach psychologically and mentally just a little bit to, I want to solve the puzzle, but not necessarily the problem, right? And that's how I get through it. That's how I became energized by this rather than sort of defeated and discouraged. So,
and I try to, like I said, I try to focus on what we've managed to accomplish as a community, and that's pretty profound. Like, this is 55K in 3 weeks. I mean, it's not huge. It's a drop in the bucket. I look at she for he or he for she. That probably was the cost of, I don't know, probably Emma Watson's speaking fee was twice that. But still, it's a huge leap forward for us as a community and getting towards being able to manage these issues. And the way that I approach it is I look at what we can do and try to avoid, because there are other moments, like I totally sympathize with you, Dave. I look at all of this and I'm like, oh my fucking God. It's so overwhelming, and it's so scream-worthy. But then I have to get out of that and just focus on what can I do right now to maybe improve the situation a little bit in the next 5 minutes, and just go with that. There's another individual that I take a lot of, and I will never remember his name because I cannot remember names for the life of me. But he was a POW during the Vietnam War. So he was in the Hanoi Hilton And he said that the people who ended up dying were the ones who were actually hopeful. The ones who said, oh, this will be over by Christmas. Oh, this will be over by Easter. Oh, this will be over by Thanksgiving. And those dates would come and it wasn't over. And the ones who survived are the ones who are saying, okay, we're in it for the long haul. So we need to learn how to endure this situation right now and figure out ways just to go step by step to just process it and live with it and endure the amount of time it's going to take for us to get free if we get free. And he ended up, I believe, being in that place for 8 years. And he had his bones broken multiple times, like subject to torture. And I think whenever I get into that headspace, like, oh my God, this is so horrible, I think about that. I think about having the mental fortitude to be able to create a structure to get yourself through years and years and years of torture. And I figure, yeah, this is really bad, but I think I can get it another 5 minutes, do something more, try to move towards a positive solution. He created a system to get through it. He created a system to deal with the torture. He created a system to deal with the isolation. He created a system to help the other men under his command who were being held captive. And that process of just saying, okay, systematizing how I'm going to endure that was what kept him alive. And that's what we're trying to point at, is that even no matter how bad it is, you can make steps towards making it better.
You know what's really, really indicative of things getting better? It's an article on the Daily Mail that was posted yesterday, and the headline is, Generation of Young Women is Racked by Anxiety, Lack of Confidence, and Despair Caused by Financial, Work, and Housing Problems, blah, blah, blah. Now, at the end of the article, it says, the number of young women worried about the future rose from 38% to 55% in a year, its research said, adding that a Brexit factor could not be ruled out. Academic Belinda Brown of the Young Foundation said, there is research which shows that if you tell women they are discriminated against all the time, it actually reduces their levels of self-esteem. Young men have more problems. We should just think about young people and stop setting them up against each other, which is what feminist stuff often does. That was the end of the article. That is a sign of hope that an article that starts with the headline, life is stressful, women suffer most, can end with, yeah, actually young men have more problems than young women. And part of the reason why young women might be more stressed out than young men by the problems in their lives is that they are constantly being told that they're being victimized.
The little victory that to me is a huge victory, because it's really my goal when I use social media, is when I make somebody think. And I know I've made somebody think when they come back with, maybe a statement of resistance to something I've said, but it doesn't necessarily sound as decisive. Like, there are a lot of times when I'll ask questions instead of making statements, and I'll get an answer back that lets me know they don't want to give up on the thing that they were dedicated to at the beginning of the conversation, but they'll concede points that I make. In this particular situation, the next stage is something that's going to take a lot of people, and they won't necessarily all have to be MRAs, they won't necessarily all have to be anti-feminists, they just all have to be awake enough and aware enough to realize that something is wrong, and that part of what that is the failure to acknowledge that men and boys are human, and that human rights apply to them the same as they apply to everybody else, or that just because people are of different ethnicities doesn't mean that a human rights issue applies differently to them, things like that. So when I look for a victory, I don't necessarily look for a change in headlines or being able to meet a financial goal. Sometimes all it takes for me to feel like, a little sense of encouragement, a little realization that, hey, this is working, is to look on Reddit and see how much Reddit's men's rights subreddit has grown. How many more people are just interested in reading what's there, or look and see how many views a particular post on our blog has, see who's talking about stuff, see what people are commenting on, or get that answer back from somebody. Well, I'm still dedicated to this idea, but you're right that X is true, or I hadn't thought of it that way. I'll have to think about this. That's a huge victory for me.
The thing is that a lot of this stuff, it goes on social media, YouTube, Reddit, Twitter, Facebook. And with these new policies that are being rolled out, we're going to see these people like Christy Winters being able to shut down any kind of opposition. And I totally agree with you, Karen. Like, when I get into these arguments on social media with feminists, and I get to the point where they cannot answer a yes and no question, And I just keep asking it. It just makes me feel happy inside that I'm forcing them to think.
And it's so mean, and it's so like my inner cunt, my inner bitch, just like freaking emerges as like Cthulhu, raw, out of my throat, right? And I just can't, and it just feels so delicious to do that.
So what is delicious for me is when I post something on Twitter. I post a link to something that I want people to see because it's got information or it's got a gotcha statement or something along those lines, where I want people to consider what's been said there. And at first it doesn't get much of anything, and then some feminist comes along and argues with it, and we get into a long knockdown, drag out Twitter battle over it. And the next time I look, because the stupid cunt has been arguing with me, it now has 30,000 views.
It allows us all, like it allows these points of views to actually get in contact with each other.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's becoming an imperative for social media outlets to start censoring stuff, because we can't have a situation where all of these different points of view hash it out for however long it takes. Maybe it'll take a couple of generations for people to be less, I don't know what they are, like emotional reasoning. And then you have the trolls who basically live off of provoking an emotional reasoning response and exhausting people through it. I mean, it's marvelous, and they want to shut it all down.
There is hope. There is hope in the form of, what do they call them? Generation Z. I read an article about some studies in which they're already starting to show some signs of more conservatism, that they're far less, I mean, I don't have a problem with classical liberalism, but they're far less regressive liberal. They conservative about everything from, I don't know, trans stuff to tattoos and all this kind of stuff. And I think this is something that Milo predicted. It's always the same. Social justice was once the radical group of outsiders, and now they've become the man. So now it's no longer fashionable to be a social justice warrior. So the next generation of teenagers coming up, they're going to be entering college in the next 5 or 6 years, and I think that's really where the fight back is going to truly come, because it's going to become more fashionable to kick against the establishment, because obviously kids are going to be naturally anti-establishment. So I think that that's something that they're going to look to us as their inspiration.
This younger generation it's a lot more cynical than even Generation Xers, Gen Yers, and millennials have always been. They've got access to like the dark net and shit like that. They've got access to information that is not subject to gatekeeping by the mainstream media. And they have gotten used to saying whatever the fuck they want. They've gotten used to being able to express themselves however they want. And so this coming generation of teenagers, I think, is maybe going to be something that actually breaks this sort of brick wall of freaking establishment bullshit, where feminism and social justice causes are portrayed as the underdog to the entirety of the population by the mainstream that supports feminism and social justice causes.
I think Facebook's the worst, to be honest with you. YouTube is catching fast now, but I think Facebook is worse. I think people think YouTube is worse because so many people are content creators, and the changes will so profoundly negatively affect them because it directly relates to their income. So when they fuck with someone like myself, it really hurts very badly. But I think Facebook's the worst because there's literally just words you can type in, like faggot, and you're done. You're toast.
Yep, it happened to me. I think I used the word tranny, and I got removed from Facebook for a time. And there are even people who are transgendered that use the word tranny, like Blair White, have been removed from Facebook.
Absolutely no evidence from any advertisers. Show me the memos. Where's the evidence from any advertiser coming forward going, yeah, we've just want to put out a press release there to say that we're working with Google AdSense. We're no longer happy with certain content types, and nonsense. And just exactly what I've said when it came to the YouTube Heroes thing today, when they talk about mass flagging negative videos. Firstly, the only people who ever did mass flagging, it was always considered a negative thing, were YouTube vigilantes, or rather they operated on Twitter, and they would get a bunch of different YouTube accounts together and they would go and mass flag. Now they're encouraging something that was once against terms of service. No, this is absolute complete and utter bullshit. There's no evidence that advertisers have been asking for that, and I think this is just like a soft bigotry of low expectations in a sense. Oh, they were going to virtue signal for those poor advertisers who wouldn't be able for the content. When you actually use AdWords, which I've used many times, which is the same system the advertisers are using, there's no part of it that allows you to specify which ads you can and cannot use. And this business of it's family friendly, well, I would simply say there's plenty of products out there that aren't family friendly. Give us a system. If YouTube is determined to make money out of the platform, which I don't think it fully is, I think it's actually investing more so in whatever it's trying to push on us. Why not introduce a non-family friendly advertising matrix for us to opt into?
There was a phenomenon that started occurring on Twitter that I think was occurring because people were in the middle of arguments. They were reporting accounts they were arguing with as being hacked. So you'd be right in the middle of an argument. You'd be reloading your screen or looking at your notifications and everything, or even right in the middle of typing a tweet where it's on your screen. You're in the little window, you're typing the tweet, and all of a sudden your screen changes and says you have to change your password because your account has had suspicious activity. And I started talking about it. And when I started talking about it, other people started comparing notes with me, and a bunch of us were having the same experience with the same groups of people. And as soon as we started talking about it, it stopped happening. So I'm kind of wondering if maybe Honey Badger Radio doesn't get targeted because they know it's going to be discussed, and it's going to be discussed in front of this specific crowd of listeners. And maybe we're not getting flagged by people because they don't want to draw attention to what they're doing.
So a couple of months ago when Milo was disappeared from Twitter, I thought enough's enough. We've got to find something, and something that would really function as a replacement to Twitter and maybe Facebook too. And so I found Minds, but I wasn't happy to say, okay, I could get a number of big YouTubers, the Bearings and Undooms and Sargons and Blair Whites of this world, and we could go and we could bring our audiences there. And I was happy enough that I could do that, but I didn't want to do anything or announce anything until such time that I'd spoken to the CEO, because the beauty of it being a smaller platform was that you would get access to the founders. And so I did. I got in touch with this wonderful gentleman by the name of Bill Ottman, who I'm going to be interviewing next Sunday. We're going to do a full breakdown of the site and talk about the new features that are coming on stream, because it's still in beta right now. But it's grassroots, totally open source, so developers can come in and they can add to it and everything else and help flesh it out further and add features, and which Facebook and Twitter can't do because they're not open source, and it takes forever for user recommendations to be implemented and to come to the site, whereas Minds can, it's very easy, and it's a small community and people can just change it how they like, and if it's approved, it's approved. So Bill's a wonderful guy, and he really gets it with free speech, and that's what I wanted to know. I wanted to know if this guy is on the same page when it comes to all speech matters, and that includes the speech that we don't want to hear necessarily, but I suppose all have to, and he does, and he absolutely gets it. And so everything we want to work on everything, developing a code for terms of service that are going to be not going to be in any way too elaborate, very simple stuff, and it's there to it's already got 500,000 active users per month, and it's kind of a mixture between Twitter and Facebook, in the sense that it makes use of hashtags, and it's kind of like Facebook in that you don't have a character limit, but you can also at people and communicate that way. Your profile is known as a channel, and so within that you have the ability to use it in much the same way as you would any other social network: upload photos and leave text-based posts, add links, share links. You can remind stuff. That's the version of retweeting or resharing. You can upload video, as I say. There's also a blog, so you can actually write blogs as well. If you go to, let me see what you're looking at right now. If you go to in the panel on the side on the left, down to the fourth button rather. There you go. Click on that. And so this is a blog section. So you can click on any one of these. You can create your own blog, or you can click on someone else's. So if some people, this is the whole purpose of this, is to get everybody to become a content creator. So if you're not a video maker,
so you can make a blog.
Writer.
They almost like articles.
Yeah, there's a shit ton of articles there. So So there's a number of other things as well that are unique features. It has a boost system for content. So if you look up there, that's your profile, is it, Brian?
Yes, I'm logged in on my profile. I was just noticing that the YouTube Heroes video has this many dislikes to likes.
Okay. It's worse now. It's last time I saw it, it was well over 160,000 dislikes. So I think it's probably much higher again. It's probably over the 200,000 mark. If you look at there's a little house type icon there. You're very close to it. There
looks like a Parthenon.
Yeah.
Okay.
So those are your points, and you get rewarded with points from logging in every day to different activities. They're actually going to change the point system to favor content creators. So when you upload a video, put up a post, based on how many shares you get, based on how many likes and all this kind of stuff, you get rewarded with points. You can trade points with other people. They're going to add a cryptocurrency at some point. Long story short is when you post something to your timeline, in much the same way as you would do on Facebook, you can hit the boost button and you can use your points, and you can get if you spend 100 points, that's 100 views. And so every 15th post in your timeline is a boosted post. It's kind of like someone else's ad, but it's from a content creator. And this is a much more egalitarian way with no background algorithm manipulation going on like you have on Twitter and Facebook because they want to push some agenda in your news feed. This is a much better way of going viral for people, and great discovery. I was talking to a gentleman before. He was saying, I've been on Twitter and Facebook for years. I've never had a following. I've had one or two, Twitter followers or something, and then he says, now I'm on Minds, and I'm getting, I've already got 79 people following. So you imagine how much more it would be for a larger YouTuber. So all roads, I think, are leading to the presidential election, and I think that, like Brexit, as soon as it's funny. I watched the Jimmy Fallon video with him.
The one that everyone got so mad at because he treated Trump like a human being.
Like a human being,
yeah.
And showed that the guy is not. It's not literally Hitler. By the way, I just want to say, I really fucking resent what these kids have done to the word literally.
Yeah.
Because now it means figuratively. For fuck's sake.
And it literally does. And I understand the irony of my using the word literally to describe that, but I think even in the dictionary, literally means figuratively as one of its definitions. Yes.
Jeez. It'll pass. There was a generation in which square meant being trustworthy and sound, and then a generation later it meant somebody who was boring and nerdy and not
uncool.
Not cool in the least. And a generation after that, using the word square to describe a person meant you were boring and uncool. It fell out. And I think literally is going to fall out too, because people are going to get pissed off with people using it too much.
Let's hope. I think with the Jimmy Fallon interview, it was really a case of there's some people clearly in the mainstream starting to realize, okay, this guy could genuinely be the next president. And what you always find is that the mainstream are invariably, they resist for a time, but they eventually become pro-establishment of the whatever political party are in power. And I think it's the same. It's like, okay, he's probably going to be the next president. And that video really demonstrated that to me. I rebutted a video on Undoom's channel about a feminist who was reading out tweets that were left on her daughter's page, and she says, look at these horrible trolls, oh my god, these people have totally taken over the comment section. And she was just standing there with this really angry look on her face in front of a bunch of other feminists, and she was saying, comment 23, feminists can't take a joke. And she's real serious. And the next one, comment 25, I'd call you a feminazi, but that's an insult to Nazis. And she's standing there, and I'm just like, that's actually pretty funny. This is the point. This is the reason they come after you. Because it's funny to do it, and they get this rise out of you. You keep reacting exactly the way they want you to. If you just stopped and took a fucking joke, they wouldn't get any more mileage out of it.
Have you seen there was a commercial or it was like a PSA that Joss Whedon directed recently. I think I saw it the first time yesterday. And he had essentially like a ton of movie stars, most of them the people that have worked for him, so guys from the Avengers films and all that. Yeah. And they're all going in, and it's essentially this, supposedly, it starts out as, maybe you should go out and vote, and by the end of it, they're calling Trump everything they can under the sun, especially Don Cheadle. I felt like, whoa, dude, you're really invested in this, you're a really angry dude. And the reason why I bring it up is it reminds me very much of the same kind of tactics that are employed by feminists that have a lot more media presence, that are usually either selling their product of feminism or they're demonizing MRAs by either, usually cherry picking things that MRAs never said, that are usually said by people like Rush V or pickup artists or just guys on the Red Pill subreddit, or guys like Elliot Rodger that have absolutely nothing to do with any of that stuff. It feels so similar to that. And I know that I'm using feels here, but the tactics are the same, and it's so deplorable.
Quite honestly, I hope that it doesn't all end in tears very suddenly. I hope we can begin a gradual, gentle migration to better platforms. Hopefully our adversaries we are in their domain, hopefully they give us enough time to complete that transition. Because, I look at, no disrespect to Milo, but if we look at what's happened to him, yes, he's news presence, and he will always and forever be the first person who was properly kicked off of Twitter. They can never take that away from him, although they have taken his account away from him. But I do look at it and think, in all fairness, his star has waned since he left Twitter, and we don't hear much about him. His stats on his YouTube are nowhere near that of what his engagement on his Google Plus and everything else. None of these things are the same, and it's kind of tragic, and I hope that he's able to come back. We hope to get him on Minds. We've discussed significantly the topic of Minds with Dave Rubin, among others. By the way, InfoWars are over there. This is an aside. But I do wonder what happens to all of us when we get kicked off our primary platforms. That's the concern. So right. I hope that we have enough time to switch over gradually.
But have you seen Milo yesterday? I think he hit Super Saiyan level 3. Because he sang the national anthem while in drag in a giant blonde wig. So
yeah, he's going to have to keep doing bigger and bigger things in order to get noticed, because his social presence, unfortunately, and, unless of course he's able to carve out something else, and I'm sure he will. It's just for now. The thing is, Milo benefits from the fact that he's also with Breitbart, and that opens up a number of other opportunities, and he's got other celebrity friends. But the most of us who are just full-time YouTubers, now we have to kind of start from scratch on other platforms, while hopefully, still being on YouTube enough that we can, start to sell the value of being somewhere else. It can be difficult for us. And I fear, Brian, honestly, we probably will lose a few people. And those people may never recover, because some of them may be so jaded and broken by the experience, they may just go, right, they may even be unemployable, like myself. I don't think I'd get a job working in a normal job again. There's no feminist employer over here in this very feminist country of mine who's actually going to hire me. And, I've said things about Black Lives Matter, so obviously that makes me a racist. And I've said things about Islam, so obviously that makes me a racist as well somehow. So I don't know. And I fear for those people who are in that situation. You have to learn to turn off in the real world, because occasionally people who I know I'm friends with, I haven't thankfully lost any friends yet. One or two people don't speak to me as much, but when I do, sometimes they will call, question me on something I've said, and we end up getting into a conversation about it in the real world, and I find that exhausting by comparison to having that debate online. And I want very much this stuff in my life to stay on my computer, basically online. I don't want to really drag it out into the real world. So you find yourself having to bite your tongue a lot sometimes.
Oh yeah, I do.
And twist the conversation around and maybe make a joke and just kind of play it off for laughs. So that's the challenge emotionally.
Finally, we have Fireside Chat number 44, where we take a tour of the Badger Cave itself, guided by Allison.
There are actually a lot of different parts to this. So there's this part, which was a salon, and then there's the back part, which was a completely different thing. It was an exercise thing, or possibly also a bachelor apartment. So it has a lot of different stuff in it. Brian, before we go, before we go into the next room, do you want us to go into the next room? Just Skype me if you want us to go into the next room. Yeah, this is just the front foyer. Let's just do a pan of the front foyer.
All right,
so this is we'll just do a pan of the front foyer.
Okay.
So that's the entrance.
Yeah, with the little genie thing up top.
Yeah. And then you go in over here. Oh, another window. There's another window. That is when we go past that entrance here, this entrance here.
And you can open the door.
This we won't go in, but this goes to another room and a bathroom.
Yeah,
but there are way too many bathrooms in here.
We've got 5 or more.
There's 5 bathrooms. So what we're probably going to do here is we'll get rid of the bathroom and just make this one office. this is the, it has a washer dryer and some pantry and a bathtub. That's just got a board on it. We don't know why. We just think that they used it for like storage
For
space.
storing dead bodies.
And here is another bathroom. This is bathroom number 2.
MST 3000.
This place has an insane number of bathrooms. So it's a little.
You can
ridiculous.
never have too many bathrooms.
Bathroom isn't that interesting. Also, the floor. I mean, the
Put a light bulb in.
Oh, okay. Jonathan is putting a light bulb in.
And maybe you
This
can
is
see.
fascinating.
Yeah. I'm Bob Vila. Okay.
Okay, and as you can see, the choice of wall board is just goddamn
Terrible.
awful.
This is a Bob Vila
very
nightmare.
Rusticy. I think I would drive over.
Bleh. All right, I'm gonna go down now.
Okay, here we go.
It's best to take the stairs one at a time.
Yeah, we're going down into the dungeon.
This is the dank basement. It's actually not particularly exciting except for a few things.
It's not like a modern finished basement.
No, this is
building
definitely a country basement.
This building was originally the original part, which that's.
We inherited these chairs
was built
too.
in 1930. So this is.
Yeah, this is a 1930s basement.
Now it's too dark for me to show, but over here is something called a cistern.
Yes.
So.
Oh, you have your flashlight. Where's your flashlight?
I have to get it.
Okay, he's gonna go get his flashlight so we can see the fantastic structural integrity of the building.
Down here, we can use this space for like building things we might use for some of the videos.
We'll
could use it
house the panda in this space.
We will have a cage over there for the panda. We let him out every so often, just for broadcasts. No.
Okay, yeah. I was thinking that we
that's a
could
fun
create a
gym.
little environment for Mike.
Yeah.
Over here.
An environment.
Right here, right where I think this would be sort of where we could put Mike.
Like a habitat.
Yeah, this will be his area.
The building should have like business hours, should be open to the public for people who want to come in, and just have brochures and freaking items that people might be interested in to inform them of this stuff, right? Just have them on display in the the front room of I think that would be excellent. And then have be open for business and be available within certain hours, like, I don't know, 2 hours a day or something like that, be available to talk with local people who want to drop in and learn about it. That's what I think would be excellent.
Well, my idea was the way that we approach mental health for men seems to be, it seems to turn men off because it requires them to consider themselves a victim or a patient when they access the mental health. So I was thinking, taking a page out of Tom Golden's work with men who've been grieving, and what Tom Golden would do was he would give the men a project to pursue while they work through their grief. So what I was thinking was, in you taking that as inspiration, parse sentences in batch form. Oh, I don't know what that means. Taking Tom Golden's approach to helping men through their grief by giving them a project or something external to work through, I was thinking that maybe the best way to approach helping men with mental health issues would be to take away that stigma of victimhood or patiency and look at it more like a do-it-yourself project. And then the helpline wouldn't be just about mental health, but also about other aspects of being part of the community, like doing activism, doing a film, doing other stuff, and pursuing positive steps towards improving your mental health as you pursue developing a skill or a project. Because this area has more public access, we were thinking it might be better, and because that room isn't drywalled, this room, which is bigger, and it's already drywalled, would be better for an actual residency, because we were also going to pursue the idea of an artist in residence concept.
That tiny window I'm gonna
So-
be. It looks like
and it's a
psych
really nice
ward.
room.
I will never visit this badger cave if I have to stand in the rain to smoke. I'm just saying that.
Erecting some sort of structure you could go out into. And this is, we just sort of set this up, or Jonathan set this up, is what we're hoping to make into a server room.
Yeah, this is where all the communications are going to be going to.
And we just found this stereo in the basement.
Yeah.
And you can walk into it and watch us do our things.
And potentially, we could be able to do VR broadcasts.
That sounds
where
interesting.
you're actually the avatars and you're in the audience.
If I'm walking around in boxer
And the other
shorts,
thing I was thinking we can do,
will I
because this
show
is a
up in
pretty
VR that
versatile
way?
space, is if we do ever have like a public open houses, this would be a great space for like just speeches and seminars. Yeah, a production room. And also, because like I said, it's a versatile space, we could remove the stuff in it and then turn it into a place where people can do like speechifying for, it's not going to be a huge audience, but probably we could get about 30 people in here.
Well, you could have, a guest speaker, like when we go to conferences and we do.
No, there's no smoking. Okay.
Allison,
Okay.
this is the Badger Cave. We can remove the deck because of no smoking if we want to.
Oh, right.
The previous owners had that.
Yeah, but it's like.
But I'm not gonna. The thing is, I don't think I want smoking.
Yeah, it's sort of. We could. Okay, all right. Smokers. What we'll do is we will create somewhere here. We'll create like a little place with like some heating coils.
We'll put a deck out here.
We'll put a deck out here with like heating coils and like
It'll be a covered deck.
A covered deck. And then you guys can come out and smoke in the covered deck, and we'll make it nice and comfortable for you. We'll put on some nice lawn chair furniture.
Yes.
And
we'll have Dirt Badger, those lights things. What are they called?
Yeah.
Patio lanterns.
patio lanterns. Yeah, it'll be very nice. And we'll have like little those little heating coil things. So just to go through the thank you for the Badger fundraiser. Everybody who pledged $5, you all collectively were responsible for $825. So give yourself a round of applause. That $825 wouldn't have happened if you hadn't pledged $5. And those of you who pledged between $10 and $20, you're responsible for $1,575. Okay, so 10 to 20, if you pledge $10 to $20, you're responsible for $1,575. Who's ready? Okay. The people who pledged $25 are responsible for having gotten us $35,000 or $3,500. So yeah, awesome. If you pledged 25, you actually really pledged $3,500. And I don't know what you're talking about with people being ready and there being meteor rain. Okay. And the 30 to 55, $3,555. The 75 to 80, $1,505. So you guys sort of slacked there. Just kidding. This is awesome. This is actually really freaking surreal. I've been walking through this and it's just been like, I'm starting to get my mind around owning this, or that we own this. All right, those of you who pledged $100, you're responsible for $4,600 worth of the total Badger Cave. And those of you who pledged $200 and $250, you're responsible for $3,900 of the Badger Cave. And then $500, you're responsible for $6,500. And if you pledged $1,000, $5,000. And $2,000, we're responsible for $60,000 or $6,000. And the top three, Quill Cannon will be the one who will be naming one of the rooms in the Badger Cave. S. Lennon will be naming the second room in the Badger Cave. And the French Badger will be naming the couch. And there will be a couch. Yeah. So.
With lots of throw pillows.
I know that we're in Canada, though. Why would we have throw pillows?
Because the French Badger likes pillows.
Okay, yes. Plenty of pillows with faces on them. just for the French badger.
We hope you enjoyed this clip show. If there was a clip from these shows you think we should have shown, please leave a comment on the video and include a timestamp. Thank you, and badger on.